Now, as we jump into our next topic, we're projecting who the top 5 free agents are for every position along the way. These are purely projections because some of these players could be possibly re-signed by their own teams. Also, these projections could change because there could be players that are released in the next few weeks. But as of right now, as of February 23rd, these are our projections for the top 5 cornerbacks that will be free agents in 2021. Lance Fernandez, the sports nerd, has the list. Lance, let's do it.
Okay, so let's get the ball rolling. So first off the list is J.C. Jackson of the New England Patriots. So he had a benefit of playing last season because the McCourties were out. They opted out of the seasons. But he did prove that he is worth the gamble for Coach Bill Belichick by making 9 interceptions and 40 tackles in his snaps. So he only earned $750,000 last season. And it's highly likely, though, that New England will re-sign him because the McCourties are already aging and they do need successors at that secondary. So more often than not, J.C. Jackson will be back in New England.
Yeah, and remember today, too, by the way, I forgot to mention that today begins the NFL tag season. So I believe they have from now until March 6th or 7th to tag players. So somebody like JC could end up being tagged in New England. I don't see that happening, but it's possible. He's actually turned into a heck of a cornerback, actually. It'll be tough for New England to let somebody like that go because they focus so much on defense and they understand that you need at least 2, probably more likely 3 or 4 really good corners in order to put together a good defense. And without knowing who your quarterback is, I think you really have to lock down a really strong defense. I'm going to say that New England tries to make an offer, but I think this guy's going to test free agency and see what's out there.
Yeah, I believe that there will be offers for him to be signed to another team, but I guess the New England Patriots will still have the leverage coming into the 2021 season to re-sign J.C. Jackson.
Look, I always say that I think that the 4 most important positions in football right now, almost, on every team, are going to be quarterback and the offensive tackle. And then on the other side of the ball, your edge rusher and your cornerback. So it's almost like, facing off against each other. You got to have a good secondary. You got to have a good pass rush. And on the other side of the ball, you got to have pass blocking and a good quarterback, and everything else kind of falls into place. So, yeah, if you're looking at somebody like this guy who last year was probably a top 10 corner, I think he's definitely should be on your list for sure. Who you got on number 4?
Okay, so second on the list, Troy Hill of the Los Angeles Rams. So he led all cornerbacks in tackles last season with 77. So he also had 3 interceptions and 1 forced fumble to his resume. But the knock against Troy Hill is that he's already 30 years old. And we know that the cornerbacks doesn't age well in a league for young people like the NFL. And also, there's a benefit of the doubt also that he was playing alongside Jalen Ramsey. So could it be that his success is because he's playing with a better cornerback on the other side of the ball, and that's why he gets those stats?
Well, it's why he gets the tackles for sure, because you're not going to throw it to Jalen Ramsey's side very much. So he probably gets a lot of targets and a lot of tackles. I think the analytics on somebody like that is really to look at the completion percentage when balls are thrown towards him. Interceptions are a great number to look at, but for me, I really love to look at completion percentage. If a cornerback is letting up more than 50% of the passes thrown his way, he's really not doing a great job, in my opinion. In my opinion, you got to keep the receivers under 50% of the time catching the ball. Now, it is impressive that he's got all those tackles because apparently he doesn't miss a lot of tackles. But look, cornerbacks start to hit their 30s. Unless you're elite, unless you're like an elite level guy where like people are like, oh, man, this guy's amazing. It's a tough one. That's a tough one for me to actually swallow and say, yeah, I would love to go out and spend $7 million on a guy who's 30 years old. I'm not going to do it because I got to lock him into a long-term contract. Now you come to me and say, hey, listen, I want a long-term contract, but give me $3 million a year over the next 3 years, especially in COVID times. Maybe we're looking at making some type of deal. If he's smart, that's what he'll look for instead of trying to break the bank, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree that no player right now, especially the lesser-known players, have the leverage actually to negotiate for their contracts. So they have to settle for less.
Well, look, I have this opinion, though, where I think that, like you look at running backs have no value in the NFL as far as It's not they have no value, but they have a lower value. And the reason they have a lower value is because you can go into the draft and you can grab somebody and plug a player in. It's easier to replace a player like that. So you look at running backs. Running backs need to have a very unique skill set in order to make a lot of money. Your guy like a Derrick Henry is a unique skill set. He's almost impossible to replace. You can't find another big, huge back like that runs the way Derrick Henry does. Derrick Henry is worth the money because he's a unique quantity. Are any of these corners a unique quantity that can't be replaced by somebody else? That's when you start to figure out whether or not a cornerback is worth a lot of money. Quarterbacks are the same way. There are unique quantities in these quarterbacks. Somebody like a Patrick Mahomes is irreplaceable for the things that he does. But I don't care who you put in that offense; it's not going to run as well as it does with Patrick Mahomes. A lot of guys are like that. They really just wanted to make that point really quick, and that's why corners actually are tough to replace. So just to be clear, they are tougher to replace. So they do make a little more money. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. So third on the list of free agent cornerbacks that we have is Mike Hilton of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he played 12 games, but he had 3 sacks, 3 picks, 5 quarterback hits, and 51 tackles, and 1 forced fumble. So do you see a situation wherein he will be back in a Steelers uniform or he will be playing somewhere else?
This is very unfortunate for me to say this, but I don't think there's any chance that Mike Hilton makes it back into the Steelers uniform. And I don't think there's any chance that Mike Hilton plays to the level that he played for Pittsburgh. Now, with that being said, if I'm being 100% honest, Mike Hilton was, and this will come as a shock to a lot of people, but Mike Hilton was the best player on the Steelers defense last year. It was not TJ Watt. Mike Hilton was head and shoulders above everybody else on that defense. He did everything. He blitzed off the edge. He was great against the run. And he's a little guy, but he was great against the run. He's like literally like having like an extra linebacker out there when you go to your nickel package. He could cover the deep middle. He was great man to man. He played some great zones. He manned up on tight ends that were 6 inches taller than him. I mean, the guy was really when he played, he had a shoulder injury. When he played, he was absolutely phenomenal out there. Complete game changer. Changed the way that defense played. And it's going to be a huge, huge loss for Pittsburgh. To me, it's an irreplaceable loss for Pittsburgh. So I think the best thing for both parties, for Pittsburgh and for Mike Hilton, would be for Mike Hilton to re-sign with Pittsburgh. Now, unfortunately, if you're familiar at all with Pittsburgh's salary cap positioning, they have no money. So it's not going to happen. It's impossible that he'll be back. So Mike Hilton should be paid. Somebody out there is going to see that talent and see that guy and say, that's the guy right there. That's the guy that we want. So somebody should sign that guy. And by the way, somebody should also pay attention to the fact that Mike Hilton was an undrafted free agent who was picked up by the New England Patriots, cut by the Patriots, played for another team, got cut by them, and was then picked up by Pittsburgh. So you can find talent everywhere. Doesn't have to be a first-round guy. Mike Hilton is actually a stud football player, really nice dude. I wish he stays with Pittsburgh. If he has to go, I hope he gets paid a lot of money.
Yeah, and at the age of 27, so he still has his best football in front of him. So it's very evident that he did everything on the field just by his stat line. So he was everywhere, and it's hard to replace someone who covers a lot of field that way. But speaking of elite cornerbacks, so we go to our fourth name in our list. It's Patrick Peterson. So even though he missed 10 games in 2019, he came back strong in 2020. He played 99.3% of the snaps, and he had 3 picks and 61 tackles. So at 31 years old, he continues to perform this way. But is Carolina or any other team willing to bet that he can maintain this consistency for at least 2 or 3 years?
Not at the price he was getting. And it's going to be up to Patrick Peterson whether or not he wants to play anymore. Is he going to get an offer? Yeah. I believe I was looking the other day at grades on Pro Football Focus for different players, and I believe Peterson graded out in like the 60s. He was not graded very high for being a quote-unquote shutdown corner. He is no longer a shutdown corner. He's a risk to not make it through the season anymore kind of corner. At one point, Patrick Peterson was probably the best corner in football. Now, unfortunately, that was wasted on teams that weren't really that good. Look, 32 years old. If he plays, it's going to be for a small deal. It's not going to be for league minimum, but it's going to, given the current COVID situation, unless he locks into a team that's just this close and they think they just need one more corner and we have a lot of salary cap room, like maybe the Cleveland Browns or someone like that, unless somebody's dumb and overpays for him, I don't think he's going to get a lot of money. I think he's going to get job opportunities. I think it's going to be up to him to say, yeah, I don't want to play for $3 million this year. I don't want to play for $2 million. It'll be up to Peterson whether or not he plays, but he will get some offers.
Yeah. So his salary, he's up for like 13 million in 2020. So I guess he will not receive anything near that in 2021. No. So we wouldn't even get a franchise tag whatsoever because of his age. So I believe that a team that is, like you mentioned, one player away from being a strong contender could use him for one season and help their younger cornerbacks learn from him. So he becomes a bridge cornerback for those younger players.
Yeah, absolutely. Or he could be the guy that plays, there's a tremendous value in, and I think it's often overlooked in the NFL, but there's a tremendous value in these older guys that actually understand the game. Patrick Peterson, if you've ever heard him being interviewed, he's a very intelligent player. He seems to be a very intelligent player, at least. So guys like that will just find a way to stick around because they'll make up for what they don't have in the athletic department anymore by being smart and being, and understanding the game plan, understanding what the other team wants to do, understanding the tendencies of the wide receivers and the quarterback himself. So I think Patrick Peterson sticks around. I just don't think he makes a tremendous amount of money. Who else is on your list?
Okay, last on the list, top 5 free agent cornerbacks. Speaking of the Cleveland Browns, so it comes from their team, Terrence Mitchell. So he just finished a 3-year, $10 million deal with the Browns in a spectacular fashion, actually. So he had 4 forced fumbles as a cornerback in 2020 to go with 65 tackles. And just like Peterson, he played almost all of the snaps for the playoff contender Browns. So what do you think will happen with Terrence Mitchell moving forward?
I think Terrence Mitchell will get the same kind of contract. I think Terrence Mitchell is a 3-year, $10 million guy, maybe a 3-year, $15 million guy. He's not going to break the bank for anybody. You could sign him. He'll be a great second or even third corner. He'll definitely have a job in the NFL. You know his age? What's Mitchell's age?
He's 31.
Oof. Maybe I take that back. See, the problem is like you're not bringing in a young guy who's on a prove-it contract. You're bringing in a vested veteran who really thinks, I'm 31. This is my last chance. Like, I'm not going to get a chance to make money after this. And your agent's probably telling you, hey, listen, we got to shoot big because the agent realizes this well's about to dry up. I got to make this guy as much money as I can over the next 3 years because then I'm not going to make any more money off of him. I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying 3 years in between 10 and 15 million for this guy. If he gets more, I'll be surprised. I'd be absolutely positively shocked. Great list, by the way, Lance. You've done a fantastic job of compiling these lists. If you like the information that Lance puts out, which is like always so detailed and so in depth, you can go over and read some of the stuff that he writes over at whatsonsports.com. And again, a lot of Lance's stuff is out there for free in the free section of What's on Sports, but it's also available inside the $2 Sports Club. You can read everything you want to by going to whatsonsports.com and checking out the $2 Sports Club.